Hey, this is Jesse with Create This. Today I'm going to take my LifePO4 battery. This is a 12 volt, 100 amp hour battery from GBS in China. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to take each individual cell here and I'm going to drain it and then charge it. And I'm going to record the number of amp hours that each individual cell contains, the capacity of each individual cell. And then I'm going to label it so that I have it for future reference. To do this, I've got some new toys today. I've got the Revolectrix power station. This is two Dell 500 watt power supplies in like a fancy case. And I'm using it to power my CellPro PowerLab 8 because it's capable of 24 volts and 55 amps, which comes out to, I don't know, some amount of wattage over 1,000 watts. So it's a very hefty, heavy-duty power supply. I've got it attached to my CellPro PowerLab 8 with 45 amp Anderson connectors here, 75 amp Anderson connectors here, and some ring terminals on the banana jacks here. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I just didn't have, I already had these ring terminals to Anderson adapter. I already had the cables made, so I don't want to make new cables if I don't have to, so I'm just adding a little extra wire there. Should be fine. So you just, plug this into the 120 volts and that'll power up the PowerLab. For the discharge of the cells, I'm not going to use regenerative discharging this time. Last time I used regenerative discharging into a lead acid battery. This time I'm going to use the built-in resistive discharging capability. It's got these big beefy aluminum heat sinks. I think it's capable of 10 amp discharge. Yeah, so I consulted my user manual. The PowerLab 8 supports 30 amps or 1,000 watt discharge in regenerative discharge mode into a lead acid battery, but I don't have a lead acid battery sitting around today. So I'm going to use the internal discharge, the resistive discharge, and that is 10 amp or 100 watt. So it's significantly less power that it can dump through the resistive load, but I think it'll be fine for my purposes because I can fully automate it that way. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take off these screw terminals. Next, we will attach the banana jacks on the PowerLab 8 to a cell, an individual cell on my LifePO4 battery. Next, we will power the power station into the 120 volts. This is going to be a little noisy. Generic high power, no parallel packs, 30 amp charge rate, 10 amp discharge. We're going to discharge only through the banana jacks. It is a LiPo. I don't know if you can see it or not, but the kilowatt meter is reading 36 watts drawn by the CellPro PowerLab 8 just to function. So I think this is where we'll see how much power is taken out of this battery. 1,000 milliamp hours out means that it's removed 1 amp hour from the battery already. Okay, we'll check back when this is done. It is the following morning and it is reading done. 10 hours and 35 minutes is how long it took to drain that one particular cell. Starting voltage for the cell was 3.41 volts. It's now at 2.82 volts. It says that we drew out 3.57 amp hours. That doesn't sound right. Okay, so this is probably almost impossible to see because the window is so small inside of my Parallels desktop on my Mac. But this is Windows 7 running the FMA PowerLab 8 version 2 software. And what I did is I hooked up the USB adapter to the PowerLab 8 and it actually, without requiring like a reboot of the PowerLab 8 or anything, it gave me the full status of the last charge, which is really nice. So the PowerLab 8 over here is saying the capacity out is 3.57 amp hours, which is just totally bogus, right? But the software on the PC says the capacity out is 103.58 amp hours. So the PowerLab 8, there's like a display problem on the LCD. When you're doing such large amp hour numbers, there's some sort of a display problem. So I'm going to use this software from now on to monitor. Back. Enter, parallel packs, no, charge rate 30 amps, discharge rate 10 amps, charge only, banana jacks, LifePO confirm. I'm gonna call this one LifePO4 cell 1 charge. Okay, I'm gonna click on cells over here and it says that it's charging at 30 amps. My wattage on the kilowatt is 196 watts, so that looks good. And the voltage has already come up to 2.94 volts. All right, we'll check back when this is done. All right, this cell is done charging. It's asking me to save my graph. Call it LifePO4 cell 1 charge. It's a pretty interesting graph. It almost looks like it was full before 3.6 volts. According to the charge in-out screen, the cell screen, it says capacity in 108.24 amp hours. All right, so I'm just gonna type in 108.244 amp hours. Print. All right, there's my label. You can see where I put the label right there on the side of the cell. And let's move on to the next cell. LifePO generic, high power, 10 amp discharge. I'm going to discharge. Okay, check back when this is done. All right, discharge complete. Let's see. .88 volts. As with before, it's not listing the amp hour properly on the display, but over here on the laptop it says 103.591 amp hours out. So let's go ahead and switch it around for charging and we'll charge it up. So I'm just going to go with charge only this time. Name my graph, LifePO4 cell 2 charge. And our wattage is up to 194 watts already on the kilowatt. And it's going to charge it up to 3.6 volts. All right, we'll check back when this is done. All right, so this battery has been sitting fully charged for about a day, I think. Let's see what the voltages have sagged to, because again, remember, we charge each individual cell up to 3.6 volts, and I'll show the graphs for each individual cell as far as voltage, amperage, and internal resistance go. I saved all of those. I'm gonna put them into a JPEG image and publish that along with the video. But let's take a look at what each one of these individual cells has sagged to voltage-wise after just a day. Again, charged to 3.6 volts. First cell, 3.352. That's actually cell number 4. Cell number 3, 3.353. Cell number 2, 3.349. And cell number 1, 3.349. So that's pretty interesting. The weakest cell in this whole bunch is this cell here on the end. This is cell number 1, or cell number 4, depending on which end you look at it from. This is the second weakest, third weakest. This is the strongest. So this is 109 amp hours, and the weakest cell is 108.244 amp hours. So they don't vary that much, really, as far as their amp hour capacity goes. They're pretty close to each other. I'm kicking myself because I forgot to record the internal resistance number for this one on the label. I've got the graph for it because the PowerLab 8 allowed me to save the graph, but I don't have the actual, numeric value that it assigned. Internal resistance is 13.6, I believe that's milliohms, 13.5 milliohms, and 13.8 milliohms. These three all had kind of the same internal resistance graph, and again, you'll see that in a minute. This one had the weirdest, so that's kind of why I'm a little annoyed that I didn't record that one. Kind of interesting to note, if you add all of these cell voltages together, you get about 13.404 volts. So if you wire all of these up in series with the series plates, then you get about 13.404 volts. Again, this was set with a charging set point to 14.4 volts if you considered all 4 of them in series. It was 3.6 per cell. So it's interesting, you can charge to 14.4, but then if you let it sit for a day, it's always going to fall down to like 13.4 if it's a healthy battery. So I think that may be why people say that voltage is kind of meaningless on these. It's not meaningless, but what matters is whether you're talking about the voltage at the time that you're charging it or whether you're talking about the voltage after a day, right? The two voltages are different. The resting voltage is the voltage after a day. That's going to be lower than the charging voltage, which is the voltage while you're charging it.